Recorded May 28th, 2026. Good afternoon, Gary. Good afternoon, Franklin. How are you two gentlemen doing today?
Fine. Yourself?
Doing all right, man. Long time no see, Gary.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been a minute. You got the beard going on. Look like a Kung Fu master. Doing your
Nice
thing.
and gray, that's for sure.
Nice and great. Frank hides his gray. He don't want anybody to see it. I'm embracing mine as it comes in. We'll see. Man, it's been a minute. Thanks for coming on the show. Rod may or may not join the show. We were doing something. You came up on our mind, and Rod said, "Man, reach out to Gary and see how he's doing. See if he wants to come on and talk the things that his expertise." And I said, "Sure." So thanks for agreeing to come on.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into the meat of the show, I mean, to our listeners out there, you know what the topic is today. We're going to talk Sentinel. We're going to talk some graph. We're going to talk some data lake. But before we get into that, you asked this question to you first, Gary. You break anything interesting this past week? Anything good?
Anything? Well, I didn't do it. I am using some AI vibe coding, and it breaks a lot of things. It fixes them pretty easily, but it does break them.
I'm using it to try to get ready for a demo that I knew about 2 weeks ago that I thought I could just AI. Let me tell you something the AI does. It creates a sense of overconfidence that you can just ignore deadlines. it don't work that way. I don't find that out the hard way. I tried to get it, and I'm using all the AI models because I pay for them. I'm putting each of the primary consumer facing ones through a 1 year cook-off, bake-off, whatever they do it. So I'll tell you about it a little bit later on. But you're right, it does break stuff, and then it comes back and tries to fix it and breaks other stuff. But no, man, what's the weather been like for you where you at here?
Oh, it's been weird. We had some record-breaking highs, and we're supposed to have rain every day, but it's like barely noticeable.
What'd you say, Frank?
Where's Gary located? I forgot.
Northeast of Raleigh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's today has been the first day it hasn't rained here in Atlanta in days.
Send it our way, man. We need it.
The ground is saturated, man. We had a big old tree. I mean, two of us couldn't put our hands around it, and after 5-6 days of rain, I mean, everybody saw it. Did you start seeing the roots?
Yeah.
Like every day is a little bit more like, oh, this tree is going to fall. And it was in a friend of my neighborhood, and sure enough, it was on the news yesterday. Massive, oak tree falls, takes out power lines in house. Like, that's what oak trees do. They don't fall in the woods quietly, especially one that had been around, they said that tree was at least 50, 60 years old, more than that. It was a pretty robust tree. The clue should have been it was pushing up the sidewalk. How about that, people? That's the clue.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've been doing a lot. I'm labbing out more when I can find times from not playing salesperson, and I'm getting ready to, what we talked about. I can't discuss on the air because I can't, but I'm getting ready to finish that particular project out a little bit. Try to, and then get ready for this presentation that I want to do. That I have to do tomorrow because I promised, and then I'm gonna take some time off from this stuff, and then I'm gonna get back into it. But Frank, what about you? What'd you break this week?
I've since I've had access to your big old LLM machine there, I've really enjoyed playing around with LLMs, loading, seeing what they can do, and so on.
I know that's pretty cool, right? Something kept spinning up. I figured it was you. No, I got on that machine the other day. I took some time off and I was getting ready to download something. I say the article, and they was like, download the new Llama model, something like this. And I really hadn't had time to sit down and geek out on the machine, but I will. We're in fourth quarter at Microsoft, so everybody's running around with their hair on fire and, all these other things. Yeah. So I'll get back to it. And
in a few weeks after that, don't you do anything to you take 2.5 months off at Microsoft? Isn't that how it works?
That's how it used to work. Let's see if it still stands up to the smell test. After you get into July, you had all this time. Let's see if that actually happens. I did put together a learning plan And I'm trying to do something, but I don't want to bring it up now because I'm getting ready to write the topic for our next show and invite the guest in. And what I'm doing is going to be in relationship to that. So I said I want to hold off a little bit. And what else have I broken? A lot of Agent 365 stuff I'm touching. Big shout out to Databond. So we had Databond on our last show. We had their CEO, co-founder, and chief product officer and co-founder on the show. And then that subsequent week, I got to host a roadshow event for them where they came in, demo, lunch and learn, happy hour, and I got to meet a lot of their team. They are very solid. For those who don't know, Databond, the way it sounds, DATABHN.ai, is a company that has a ingestion solution. Primarily they advertise as being able to groove, modify your logs as you ingest them in the Sentinel. But I'm finding multiple uses for it because data is data, right? You bring it in, you modify it, you morph it, and you put it where you want to put it. They are very solid. Their team is solid. Their vision is good. They're not a cribble, clone. They have a very different approach, and their UI is actually really decent. We had their leadership on the last podcast, but I want to get some of their architects and engineers on. They did a demo that's actually pretty good. So for our users, users, is DA. Let me get it right here. I'll put the URL in. I want to get them back on, and I want to get their engineer on. He did an outstanding demo, and he's supposed to get me access to a lab, and I want to get my hands in it. So conceptually, I understand, right? Agent, edge ingestion, forward your data to it, put their version of DCRs or filter rules, or I forget the actual terminology of what they call for the way that they ingest data, inspect it. Best part about them, they have an ASIM, and or a schema drift technology that's so cool that if you put a log source that is expecting a table to exist and it doesn't, it'll flag itself until you either go create that location, that table, or help you create the table. So most times you only get an alert when you're ingesting to a series of tables that exist and you stop ingesting to it. If it's expecting that connector, that solution is supposed to have a missing table, it'll fire it off and say, no, you don't want to do this because you're going to be missing some data, and help you create that table or find a correction to it. That's one of the best features that I like about it. The actual portal is pretty. What artificial intelligence, you got all the data stuff and the way they measure, you see the data go in and out. It's really good that way. But I think the strength of that company is going to be the people that are in that, and they're in startup mode. So anybody's out there interested in looking at what they do, definitely go give Databond a look. If you're using Sentinel, it doesn't just work with Sentinel. You can ingest other data sources, but they're a Microsoft partner, and give them a look at. And see if you can get a demo. We'll probably try sooner than later to get, like I said, one of the engineers on. And I told him if you come on the show, it needs to be a deep dive. You need to get into the weeds and show and what's going on. Frank, what else did you do this week?
I'm just doing a lot of Foundry training, a lot of GitHub training. So that's been my life recently, I did see the SC500 study guide dropped, which was good. So the AI stuff is in there now. Scary thing is that was actually devised back in mid-January. So I have to take a look to see how well it's holding from all the changes. But hopefully it will do well. And a lot of times you don't put preview products into those things, but we did. So I'm excited to see about the feedback and also the training that comes out of it and the testing that comes out of it. So hopefully it ends up as a good foundation, a good start for SC500 on the AI side.
Yeah, I looked at the the dossier of the skills that are being tested. I'll tell you about it a little bit later. But no, I was just going through some training stuff today. It's hard because you got required training, you got other stuff, and you got to find time to do this stuff. And I got 2 other pieces of paper. I was going to go take some certification for my SOC that I can't get to. I just, like you said, I'm a pull of what Brody used to do. That he did all his certifications and stuff in the winter because they were snowed in Canada.
Nothing else to do.
And do that. But yeah. So Franklin, weird question before we get to our guest and what we want to talk about for our topic. We still got we got a few minutes before we get into the meat of the topic. When you were teaching a Foundry course as part of your training company, where are you teaching Foundry in the use case of what Foundry does? Or are you talking about how to secure Foundry? Or are you talking about both?
This is all from a developer perspective. So, I mean, you got to remember, I still have 40 years of app dev experience, even though I don't do it that much anymore. So it's really pro code focused on Foundry.
So
I actually did a Copilot Studio training the other day, which was fun, because basically it's same meat, different gravy. It's the same thing. It's an agent that connects to an LLM that accepts prompts, that has tools and knowledge and memory. It's the same thing, but kind of packaged a different way in different hooks that are in place. Like Copilot Studio, of course, has a lot of hooks into M365 and Dynamics Power Platform. So, it's all kind of the same thing from there. But no, this is definitely pro code scenario, and I'm doing a lot with GitHub for that side too. I'm actually going to take the GH600 exam tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. That's out of all 3 exams I'm taking, GH600 are probably the one that I'm least confident in. It'll probably be the only one I pass. So
yeah.
So we'll see how that goes from there. So yeah, no, it's all pro code development from there. I think that the training, Foundry and the SDKs are going so fast that training that was out 2 months ago is already behind. I think that there could be a better. I do this in my class for the students. A better way of explaining. Here's the tools you should be doing, and here's your approach to get an app. Get an agent into production. I don't think Microsoft yet does a very good job at that because they want to be kind of very open. Here, you want to use OpenAI, you want to do this, you want to do this. Like, you know what? Students are coming in, it's like, all right, what's the most efficient, effective, best way of going about doing this? I have to say, here, let's talk about certifications, if you don't mind, if you've got time in there. So I'm concerned that people are going to be disappointed in AI 200. And this is what they call the AI 103 is agent development. There's like a duck somewhere. Is this because I'm complaining about things? So
no, my phone ringing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So AI 200 is supposed to be the AZ 204 replacement. But AI 200, so the name of the certification is Azure AI Cloud Developer Associate. If you take a look at the role statement, it says you're responsible for contributing to all phases of implementing AI solutions on Azure with an emphasis on back-end services and components. So, there's a lot of database stuff. There's a lot of stuff. So you're not really the agent developer here. You're just kind of doing the, Azure functions, hooking to databases, using AI services for that. And so I think that there's a miss here with the naming of the exam versus what the exam is doing. I think the role statement's correct, but I think the name of the exam is not correct. And I think people will be disappointed coming from AZ204 to see what the deal is. Now, another exam that people should take a look at is the AI 300. Now, this exam I'm actually pretty excited about because they have part of their study guide is dealing with. Here, let me get this. part of their study guide or the responsibilities will be implementing generative AI quality assurance and observability, and also optimizing generative AI systems and model performance. I really find that a lot of students coming in and a lot of people doing this are not taking into consideration the evaluations that are required to deploy an enterprise agent, and also for being in production. So I think that AI 300, especially the part when they're talking about the Gen AI, observability and evaluations, is really a very interesting exam to go take. I haven't dug into the content yet, but I think that that's going to be excellent topics to really understand. I would probably redo all of these exams, and because there's really no strong Microsoft Agent Framework test here. There's some of it in AI 103, but overall, I mean, I would probably redo these, and but because it's all spread out, like AI 200 has very relevant and good content. It's just not labeled right. The exam name is not correct, and people are going to have the wrong assumptions coming from AZ204, where AI 300 has incredible objectives here that it would be required, that the AI 103 people should actually be looking at. So that's kind of my thing right now, looking at training. I'm just doing workshops right now, but understanding all the stuff inside and out. I hope that this gets promoted a little bit better. Some of the things get cleaned up a little bit better. And we have to realize that just like with SC500, this stuff was defined in January probably, or even before. So we have to let them catch up to it. The only thing I'm going to ding them on is really the name of the exam or the certification for AI 200, because that's not really an Azure AI Cloud Developer Associate. I think there would be a better name for that.
Yeah, you're talking about being a dead horse here, because I've always said that either the description and the objectives sometimes don't mirror up to what they say. But you're talking about something that's probably very structured, that you have to have a definitive designation, which is easy, SC, AZ, MS, whatever it may be, AI. And then you have a number. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. You would 100, if I'm talking about security certification exclusively, the SC 100 was this global security architect. I got that one. You know how I feel about the SC 200. I think that exam should be either available as a composite exam where you take it and you have two versions of it. I think that if you take it and you have not completed prerequisites, I think the exam should be extremely hard to pass. But I also think that you should have an SC. We can talk about this a little bit later. I want to still.
I think since Defender's assimilating all the other products, there should only be one exam, and it's SC200, and pull Purview into it, Entra into it, because all of these things are being assimilated into Defender. What do you think?
Let's do this. Let's save all that opinion, because now you're still in the thunder. Remember, what you put inside the chat over here, WhatsApp, is what we're going to try to do the next show on. So since you've already talked about it, the next show we're going to have you on as our guest, and we're going to talk about all things certification in the current landscape. But we're going to keep it security focused. Because I'm getting different people ping me about different things, and
let me know. I can hopefully get a content manager on here to discuss some of the different things. So, yeah, give me a little bit of warning there, because it's getting up to vacation time for these people.
2 weeks.
All right, I'll see if I can get them on.
Next show is, what's the date? The 28th. The next show is the 11th. So. I'm going to get the show published, and I'm going to get the show written up and published out here over the weekend. And then if you can get them by 11, yeah. But we definitely wanted to talk to you about your perspective of some of the exams, security focused and AI focused primarily. What you and I talked about in our WhatsApp chat, we should talk about that exam. Before we move on to our guest, who's sitting patiently waiting with bated breath, how much do you believe, and Gary, you can chime in on this piece here too. I don't know how much you are connected to it. How much do you think next week's build will affect the way the next exams are coming out? Because there's going to be a lot of stuff talked about a Microsoft build here next week. I'll go to Frank first. Go to Frank
No,
first.
go ahead, Gary.
Okay.
I was just saying, I don't think it would affect the exams, at least not for a while.
Yeah. I think what you go ahead, Frank. You next. That's a good answer. It's short and to the point.
Well, there's already one announcement that they made. I'm trying to find the exact name of it. Because basically right now when you spin up an agent, and what's called hosted agents with inside Foundry, but this technology will be used throughout. There's called Azure Container Apps Express, which is very lightweight, very fast to spin up container apps that are going to be used for agents. So that there's already been a blog post about that. So I think from the AI world, I think that there's going to be, I think there's going to be more of the, skills integration, because there's a lot of things going on in skills that are not being surfaced yet, that I think will come out at build, and so on. I know nothing, so I'm not under NDA for any of this stuff. As somebody that does training and learning content, I don't want to know what's coming out. I want to know when it's out. So from there, because I don't want to get confused. So yeah, I mean, so I think that there's going to be a lot of AI focused, and also bringing out the world of skills focused, and what's going to be dropping a build. So I think it's going to be a very interesting build. It takes a while for these exams to get updated. I got in an argument with someone on Reddit about this, because there's a process and content and exams or whatever. I think that they might have to date, how often they're doing the overall skills measured reviews on everything AI, because it's just changing way too fast. Like my favorite Microsoft Agent Framework training is, that's 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago, is already out of date. So I understand what the content managers go through in putting out these exams. So I always give them a break there and understanding what's coming out. And the other thing that I got into a debate with someone on Reddit, they're like, no, I have to follow the PowerPoints that are there, and I'm like, no, you follow the topics and explain what's changed, how to use it in reality or in the real world, and so on. So it's just going to be the trainer's responsibility to take the content and let students know what the deal is.
I agree. When I was on the podium 10 years ago, more than that, it seemed like, I live by to date myself, training at places like, New Horizons and a couple other places, Global Knowledge. They were
Novell Netwear. I know that's where you're.
Yeah, I actually, you know what? I never taught a single Novell course.
That was my first certification. I still have the certificate signed by Ray Norda. There you go.
I don't know if Phil was I got all my certs. I think I did an exercise where I took every piece of paper, every card that came with a certification I had, and I scanned it so I could have it digitally, right? And now I'm just going to do like a little collage, but I took some certs that didn't give you got to pass a fail piece of paper. That was your cert. That's it. You didn't get anything that came in the mail. But we'll definitely we'll get to it. We'll talk about that. Maybe we've been promising to have a few shows that are very much skill, certification, and credential focused. I would love to maybe do a counterbalance of opinions, whereas we ask AI of your choice, maybe we ask them all, ranked on the importance of security, certifications that are actively available, rank them, and then see how we come back and we rank what you think is important.
I run into that all the time. If you ask, AI, tell me about audit and the Defender for Portal, they're going to say, oh, you use that to see what's changed with inside the portal, all that fun stuff. They don't understand it's the unified audit log used for analysis, right? So I wouldn't go that far with it.
Well, I just want to get a very unscientific and probably ungrounded opinion from something, this AI stuff that doesn't have any real world experience about what is perceived as value.
What I did do with it is I actually asked it, what did it think about the title for AI 200 versus what the role description was? And yeah, I came back saying, it came back with well, if you interpret it like this, then yes, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't interpret that. It has to be exactly what it is. So I actually did that with AI 200. It's pretty funny.
Well, we're at the point where we bring our guest in. We're actually over, but he's much less a guest than a friend of the show. He's been on a few times. So we'd like to get Mr. Gary Bushey back. Gary and I were comrades at Microsoft, and he left for greener grass, and he's out still doing all things Sentinel and now Sentinel Data Lake and Sentinel Graph. We brought him on because as much as we think we know about it, it is as much opinion and perspective, because we've had Chris Seltzer on, who was all about Sentinel and Sentinel automation and doing this with MCP servers. And we brought someone else on. They were talking about the pricing model and all this again and new ingestion methodology. And we brought someone else on there. So because the product in itself has 3 or 4 major configuration, titles, and then within that, multiple configuration parameters. Workbooks are still there. I thought notebooks were going to bite the dust. You still got the content hub. You got all these things. So you could talk about any one of those particular top level configurement things as a class and get into it. But I really wanted to focus on getting him on, him being one of our experts and friend of the show, about his take on what has changed for him, his perception and the way he uses it around Sentinel Data Lake and Sentinel Graph. So Gary, the floor is yours, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let's start talking about data lakes, because Sentinel Graph relies on data lakes. If you've been using Sentinel for a while, one of the biggest quote-unquote issues is that you are charged based on the amount of data that gets ingested. Well, a lot of that data you may need, may not need. If it's coming from a firewall, there's going to be a lot of information, and you're getting charged a lot of money for that. I guess a lot of money could be subjective. But in any case, you're ingesting this data that you may or may not need, but you still want to have around, but it's getting expensive. So how do you take care of that? How can you, lower your cost? Well, a lot of companies would do something like Cribble or something else to strip out the information before it gets put into Sentinel.
Or Databun. Messing with you. Go ahead.
Well, recently, Microsoft added a new feature called Data Lake, which will allow you to put information into the data lake rather than store it directly into Sentinel. Now, there's good points and bad points with that. Good points is it's a lot cheaper to ingest, and it's a lot cheaper to keep around for long periods of time. Some of the bad points are you can't use it within a Sentinel analytic rule. So you would need to figure out some way to get some of the data and push it into an analytic rule. And then you also have to pay to query this data. And if you're querying a lot of data, that can add up. So let me share my screen here, and we'll just do some walking through.
I know this is a little bit different from sharing in Teams.
Yeah, I think I got this right. Entire screen. There we go. Share. I should have practiced that before. All right, we'll get that out of the way.
There he is.
All right, so if you see me looking up and down, it's because the actual screen is above me, so I'll be looking every so often to see people.
Okay.
So one of the new features they added as part of the data lake is under configuration with Microsoft Sentinel, you have the tables. And one thing I should mention is that you need to be part of, or you should have Sentinel as part of the Defender for this to work. But now we have a list of all the tables. Previously, you would go into Log Analytics and look at it, but it's exposed here. And you can see that we have this tier listed. So there's Analytics, which is typical, what we would call Sentinel. And then rather than do that, let me sort. And sort descending so I can see Data Lake. So these are the tables that are being put into the Data Lake, which is created as part of Sentinel. Now, one thing I should mention, if you go in and look in the Azure portal for the Data Lake, you won't see a Sentinel Data Lake. It's hidden. But you can see we have the Data Lake, the table type, total retention days. Now, I'm sure as everybody knows with Sentinel, if you put it into Sentinel, you get 90 days of free. You don't get more than 30 days free retention with a data lake, so you have to pay past that, but it is a lot cheaper. So I have these two set to 180 days. This is the name of my workspace, and there's some other things here that you don't want to do that. With a transformation. Now, if I can go and there's my scroll bar. Oh, bummer. Let me go to a different place. Is my screen too small, or can everybody see that okay?
We can.
All right.
Yeah. If people are maximizing the screen, that's only because you do it locally. I could make the screen.
All right. So now that I have this, you can see up top here we have some nice features. We have data retention settings, which I can go in and say how long do I want to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Close out. We have scope tag rules. Now, disregard that. I think that's a private preview feature, and I'm not supposed to show you that. Sorry. Sometimes you can do a split transaction. So this is more within the Sentinel piece where you can have some of the information go into your Sentinel table and some of the information go directly into a data lake table based on your KQL queries. So that is quite handy. And you can also filter. So you used to have the data collection rules. Those could have been a little bit hard to write, but you can also do that here now. So you can filter the information and filter out the data that matches this rule. So if you don't need it, you don't have to ingest it. And it's very simple, just using KQL, and you have multiple conditions, so you could do different KQL queries. Let me show you another analytics here, just for the split rule. And you can see pretty much the same thing where you can split it out using a KQL query.
Mm-hmm.
And that is quite useful. For instance, if you're getting in a lot of the firewall rules, there may be some summary data that you want to put into Sentinel, but the actual details you'll put into your data lake just for cost purposes. Now, let me go back here and we go back to data retention settings. You may have noticed that there were two different settings. We have the analytics tier. Again, this is what Sentinel has. So I can say, I want my analytics retention to be 90 days. However, I need to keep this data for a year. So I'll set my total retention time for a year. After 90 days, it will automatically get moved into my data lake and then stored there. So I'll have my 90 days free, and then I can move it into the data lake. This is quite handy for a lot of our customers that have requirements around keeping their data for long periods of time. They don't necessarily need to be able to see it instantly, but they need to have it just in case. And then again with the data lake tier here. Now, one thing I can do, I'll have to come back and change this later. I can click this, and now I'm saying all this data is going to go directly into my data lake tier. So if I save this, you notice this tier, once it gets done. So my alert table tier has been changed.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a data lake. So it's as simple as that. If you decide that you want your table to be a data lake, you just go in and make that adjustment. I'm going to put
let me ask you a question before you go forward.
Yep.
What are the nuances and the benefits of switching and deciding which do you want it on analytics table or do you want a data lake table? Is there a nuance we should be aware of?
Yes, most definitely. Again, a data lake table cannot be used directly in an analytic rule. So what you would have to do is over here, you can see the summary rules. You would run a summary rule against your data lake table and make a summary of that. and put that summary as a Sentinel table. And then your analytic rules can go against that new table.
Okay, that makes sense.
And again, there's going to be a cost associated with that because every time you query, there is a cost associated with a query. I'm not exactly sure what the costs are at this moment. I forgot to look that up beforehand.
Can you go to Data Lake Exploration real fast?
What was that, Frank?
Can you go to Data Lake Exploration real fast? It's down on the left side.
Exploration. Okay. Yes.
All right. So summary rules, aren't that more along the lines of just so you can do correlation checking in your analytics rules, where down here the KQL and the jobs are more along the lines of restore now versus the old search and restore of whatever that was called?
You still have the search and restore, but
Which
yeah, I
nobody
believe you're
should
right with the jobs.
Nobody should be using search and they should be getting rid of whatever they were called back in the basic logs or whatever it was called, and using the data lake, right?
You're right.
Okay.
And really, there isn't any real reason to restore the data. I mean, if you need to do a query, you can do the summary of the data as well. Or, I mean, you can still do a query against this data within the data lake, but it's just going to be an expense. Look, I can, let's see, do I have anything in here? In the last 24 hours, I won't. So I still just ran a regular KQL query, but I'm looking at a data lake rather than an analytic table.
Right, so
I still get all the same information.
So let's forget about search and restore because that's legacy. Do jobs actually create a temporary table?
That's a good question.
Let's see. Let's create a job. Create a new KQL job. We have a nice wizard here. Destination workspace, create a new table or add to an existing table. So if you have a table already set up, you can use that. So if I select this, I don't think I have any tables available.
So this will take the data lake data and stick it into an analytics tier for you to use for what you're doing. Right. Okay.
Right. And you notice that has the underscore KQL underscore CL appended to the end of the table name. So that way you can still call it the same thing as it would be in a data lake, but you can definitely distinguish between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things I highlight. I liked about that, being able to have a quick gander and realize how that table was created. Yep. Good stuff.
And again, you write your KQL query. Let's see. Yeah. And then you can set up the schedule when you want this to happen. It can be one time, or you can set up as a schedule if it's going to be information that you need constantly. So again, network information coming from firewall, you'll run this for your summary, maybe daily or even weekly, so you have that to query against.
Okay.
And while we're here, we also have notebooks. We mentioned notebooks earlier. These are typically written in Python. They weren't used a lot, I would say, previously, but now, as it is a great way to access information in your data lake, they are definitely making a comeback. And we're going to be talking about those a little bit more when we start talking about graphs as well.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is that direct access to the notebooks seems to have been absolutely deprecated in favor of you interacting with it via, well, the IDE of choice here is, VS Code.
Right.
But you can also see that they're very much ingrained to GitHub Copilot, but you'll get to that. And you notice that it says optional on one, but the other one doesn't seem like it's very much optional at all. But go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I mean, they're still out there under threat management. That's still around. But again, I haven't seen a lot of people actually using those as part of threat management. I am seeing them being used more for Data Lake. And again, we'll touch on them in a little bit for the next topic. How much time do I have, by the way? I forget when this ends.
Oh, you have until
Midnight. You can keep going till
June
midnight if you
30th.
want.
Yeah, until June 30th.
All right. Plenty of time. Plenty of time. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about? Tables.
So within that, I have a question.
Yes.
So with these tables and the way you go out, most of the time we get people, they go directly into the data lake and they don't really give a foundational or a foundational grounding. Okay, a data lake is a data lake, but you have a good example right here where you see the table type, you see Sentinel and XDR. Can you give a very brief explanation of why they're click the down chevron on table type at the very top? Yeah. Well, it's not going to do it there. I'm sorry, but yeah, you could. Yeah, you'll see that you have XDR, Sentinel, and custom, right? And so custom, we've already figured out, it's going to create a nuance suffix to let you know that that KQL thing was written against it. But what are the main things that people should consider, or why there are two distinct delineations between Sentinel and XDR data type?
Yeah. Well, because my Sentinel instance is part of the Defender portal, one of the great things is I don't have to ingest the Defender information into Sentinel anymore. It shows up automatically. So the Defender information is going to be XDR. Now, one thing I should point out is if I go into this one, I can't do anything with it because it's an XDR table. It's not a Sentinel table. So I can't make it go into the data lake. It's going to be XDR table. You got 30 days of analytics retention and 30 days of total retention.
So it sounds like that XDR table is very much locked into some type of proprietary LAW that XDR is dumping into that you can't modify. You can only ingest into it. You ask 5 people, you get 9 different answers, but that's the most simplest answer. I appreciate it. I just wanted to verify. I've been doing this. I'm like, sometimes it makes me second guess myself because customers are very good at asking the same question in a different manner, and it makes you go, what did you just ask? And so they are thinking that the XDR table is like one customer said, "Oh, is this an embedded table inside the data lake, or is the data lake embedded inside a separate table?" That I said, you very few customers have the need to know the very detailed nuances about this, right? Because they don't even get down to that granular level. But I just wanted to bring that up to our listeners, just to clarify that a little bit.
And there's always talk about having XDR be able to push the information into a data lake after the 30 days, just so you have it available if you need to look further back in time. Of course, you always were able to ingest this into Sentinel and then store it in Sentinel. I haven't looked to see how. I think it's still possible. I haven't done it for a while. But hopefully, we'll be able to use it with data lakes in the near future. I forget what I was going to say.
I'm sorry to distract you. I got my guest off his game. Go ahead. But why you searching on that? Let me ask you another question.
Yes.
So within, when you're setting the data lake up, can you set up data lake exclusively without having a log analytics workspace when you do Sentinel?
No. You still need to set up Sentinel the regular way. Then it'll be interfaced with Defender. That's not the right word, but you'll set it up within the Defender portal. And once you do that, then you can enable the data lake.
Now, one table that you have in yours, which I'm going to go look in a minute, maybe while we're on, is that you have the connector status info analytics that's running. So maybe I need to go check a couple things. I don't think I have that one there. Maybe I don't have that connector enabled to be able to do it. So what is? Click on that and see what that one is. This table is not supported for table management. Okay. Then that's because it's locked down because it's an XDR table.
Right.
Probably, and let me ask this question. Maybe Frank knows it too. I think I do. Most of, if not all, of the XDR tables are queryable via advanced hunting, but not all of the Sentinel tables are exposed for advanced hunting. Every time I think I know the answer to that, I can't figure it out.
Well, if it's an analytics table, you should be able to see it. Okay. If it's XDR table, you should be able to see it. If it's a data lake, you won't see it.
Okay.
That's why you have the KQL query down here for data lake exploration.
That makes sense. And I could have sworn that alert info used to be part of the Sentinel analytics table, and now
that's the one I just switched to data lake as a.
Oh, okay. That's why I was like, wait a minute, why did I do that? You switched it over. Okay.
Now I gotta wait 60 days. Oh no, I gotta switch things, but I'll take care of that later. I knew it was the bad one to use as part of the demonstration, but that's the one I just switched over.
Yeah, and then the alert table, people probably consider it, configurable because the alert table can be noisy, and you probably, if you wanted to dump it into a data lake, right? Okay.
Yeah, I don't really recommend making this a data lake because it is used in a lot of the queries. There are things you can do. Like I said, I had it set to 90 with 180 days total retention. So after 90, it would get pushed into the data lake. But that's something you definitely need to consider is what should go into your data lake. It's one of those things, to paraphrase Jurassic Park, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing.
That's the thing.
There's definitely going to be a cost benefit, but again, you have the restriction against using it in analytic rules. You have to pay for the queries themselves. So if it's something you're going to be using a lot, it may or may not make sense to put into a data lake, especially if you have a really good policy with Microsoft in regards to how much you pay for Sentinel ingestion.
Well, my biggest thing is,
can you go to device? Yeah, can you go to device process events table?
Device process. I guess I should have searched for it. Device process events. Okay.
Can you click on data retention settings? All right, so in here, so click on the 180 days. So there's certain tables that XDRs you're going to actually be able to change the retention for. So this will be 90 days in XDR, and then basically the rest of the time will be in the data lake. So the total retention here goes to the data lake, I'm asking.
Well, it's an analytics table. It's not an XDR table.
Yeah, that's what I was going. Yeah, the device process is going to be that, because we figured that out years ago, Frank. I think when we were talking about when they exposed the granular ingestion, when you turned on the XDR and you went down to MDE, and we were warning people, be very careful about checking each one of those boxes, because you could turn that connector into very much like a sysmon table, sysmon collector, and start grabbing everything.
So let's take a look at the XDR tables. Go to table type XDR.
The other thing to consider is this is a very old Sentinel instance that I have had since day one. So there may be tables in there that have changed.
I had a very old Sentinel deployment till Frank dirtied it up, and I blasted it away a few months ago. And it was also because, I'm just giving Frank grief.
All right, so but when we're saying that the XDR tables, so people are going to be confused by that, because they're like, okay, XDR to me is Defender for Endpoint Data, right? And device process events is Defender for Endpoint Tables, right?
Yeah.
Of a sort.
So when we're saying that when you said before that the XDR table, once it passes its retention of the 90 days, we don't know how to get it over into Sentinel, over into the data lake. That kind of freaked me out because I'm like, hey, what happens if I lose all my device information after so many days because it can't go into the data lake? So when I think XDR, I think Defender for Endpoint Data, right? So realistically speaking, the key data that I care about, device endpoint stuff, right? So device process events or whatever, that is Defender for Endpoint. I still have the ability to have retention for up to 12 years, and that data is actually hitting the data lake after that first initial period, correct?
Yes. Maybe make sure I'm not giving you bad information on what the table type means.
I think the biggest thing is that it took me a minute to figure this out. And some conversation you and I are having, frankly, we talked about this a while back.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is that if somebody's listening to this and you just said, hey, the XDR data, once it gets past that, 6 months or whatever it is, it's or after the 30 or the total retention of 30 days, then you don't have access to it. If I'm listening to this podcast, right away I'm thinking my Defender for Endpoint Data I can't get to anymore. That's the first thing that entered my mind. Okay. So we just have to be careful about using the term XDR. So yes, the Defender for Endpoint Data, if you go back to device process events, which is one of the Defender for Endpoint tables, that they talk about it being analytics, which is quote unquote in the analytics tier. It is Defender data, Defender XDR data, which you then can manage inside the analytics tier, then get shipped out to the data lake. But it can't go directly into the data lake because Defender for Endpoint has to do is magical processing and figuring things out. So if you go back to device process events, let's talk about that. I'm just saying the terminology we're using right away when you say XDR data is only 30 days and it's gone, then that was a concern for me because of what people would think that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to device process events, that's Defender for Endpoint Data. Yes, it's showing in analytics, but realistically speaking, it's in the Defender workspace, shall we call it? And if you hit data retention right now, data retention settings, Defender for Endpoint Data will stay in analytics for 90 days, and then that retention will ship it out to the data lake. So I'm just concerned that when we said XDR data is only good for 30 days, that people are going to flip out, just from the terminology standpoint.
Yeah, and I think a little bit that you got to have a little bit of experience. I was right there with you. Let me tell you how I sort of rationalize it. If you look at this and you see those and you see that the data type is Sentinel, that's a tip off that, and I'm sure I'm not demonstrably true, and you can probably dig holes in this, but it will stand up this logic. If you look at it, and it is something that was configured by virtue of a data connector, more than likely it is going to almost exclusively it's going to end up into an analytics tier regardless. And so what the XDR is, if you go back to, if you change your data type from any to XDR, you'll notice that when you look at those XDR tables, they are not individual data connectors that talk about that. So I was doing a little bit on the side, and I was going to the Content Hub to see if there was a data connector called this, but these aren't. These tend to be things that are inherent to the back end makeup of XDR, and I can sort of substantiate the way I go about this logic. And I think you got to have a little bit of experience in this to understand a little bit of history. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense because of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 6 up there. 2, 4, 6. Yeah. You don't see a connector associated with that, and that tends to lend that is a inherent background configuration for these particular things. What made me think of it this way, bear with me for a minute, Franklin and Gary. I did this. So I looked at it and I said, well, Gary, go to your left and go all the way down to settings system. And if we're going to show something that exposes your tenant, don't show it because we're live.
Yeah, it's my demo tenant, which
Okay.
I'm going to kill my Sentinel after this anyway.
Okay. So if you go to that and you see Yuba, you'll see that up until the data lake came into existence, this default configuration like this existed only in the Sentinel when you were configuring it on the workspace down. But you see how it's manifested there? And so now you're starting to see that these are certain tables that are being populated here, and they are just I guess they won't say that's just part of the makeup of how they are and how they're being populated into the storage repository. But the other thing that made me think about this was like, wait a minute, if I see device login events as part of XDR, they've taken certain connectors and extrapolated them out from the overall connectors to make this work. This didn't exist because they could not get this to work until they pulled this out and made this a separate configuration variable in this. And the other way I figured this out was go to Data Lake. Am I missing something here? Go to Sim Workspaces. I do too much. So if you click on whichever one is your data lake, and you go down to you see the entity analytics, you'll see that it forces you to go configure U, but it takes you back to the other. If you go to Workspace Configuration Manager, I'm sorry, Log Analytics Settings. Sorry, you'll see that if you go to the Log Analytics workspace on this, you won't be able to configure that XDR from the Log Analytics workspace unless there's a data connector associated with it to be able to do it. I'm probably not making good sense on this, but it took me a minute to figure this out. I'm like, oh, this is why they did that, to be able to sit here and say that these particular configuration parameters, we want native to XDR, but we want to take them out of Sentinel as part of the data connector requirement. So now you can connect a Sentinel workspace and not have Data Lake on and still go in and configure Yuba because they pull it out. They couldn't get that in. They being whoever the engineering is, they couldn't get that into the Data Lake, and they had to figure out a way to extrapolate it from putting into Log Analytics exclusively. So they made the Yuba a separate configurationable parameter, and that Yuba, I saw to know inside, is split in its capabilities in the Defender portal across Sentinel configuration base and XDR base. Now, when does this all go away? July of next year. Remember, we're going to have the unification of the portal finally. I think that's when that go away.
Did it get pushed back again?
Say again now?
Didn't it get pushed back again?
It got pushed back to next year.
Oh, next year,
Next July, not this July.
Gary, I wanted to point out that you've only got $12 left on your subscription, but
yeah, I saw that and I wanted to.
Hey, we're gonna take
Curious as to why that.
all right, so remember, people are listening to us. Also, I mean, more people listen to the show, so we just have to be careful when we just say the statement XDR without them seeing the tables that we're talking about. Okay, so people, when you hear XDR, are going to say, they're going to think Defender for Endpoint sort of data. Okay. All right, we can continue.
I have the face for radio, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir. I just want to go in because that befuddled me for a while because I kept watching all the PowerPoint slides, all the training, and I hear what you're saying, I didn't even understand it. And then when I put it in action, which has probably led to the reason I deleted my Sentinel environment because I could not deploy Data Lake. Why couldn't I do it? I ended up having to deploy it into not that I couldn't. I ended up having to just redo Sentinel because I had to choose a region that had capacity for me to set up Data Lake.
Yeah, that's also an issue right now. A lot of regions don't have capacity to add Data Lake.
And that's why I said, let me blow this subscription away, start over. But what I did was, most people think that when you redo your Sentinel environment, you don't have to delete the Log Analytics workspace. Just disconnect it from Sentinel, set it to the side, and make sure you disconnect all your data ingestion connectors before you take it out of Sentinel. And because you think it's stopping ingestion, you be surprised what happens. You just don't know. So remove all your connectors, disassociate that log analytics workspace from Sentinel, and set that historical data aside. I think I may show something that may be cool, but I can't unless I can reproduce it once. I'm not sure it's not a nuance. Whereas if you take a legacy log analytics workspace, you can then ingest that data into the data lake. And I was playing around with it. I'm like, well, that would be slick. But I think I was just clicking, and I saw something that looked like it could do it. But if I can make it happen again, I'm going to show it on a pod.
Well, log analytics has the real-time data export, which would allow you to go to a data lake.
Yeah, so maybe I'm right then. I saw it and I said, I want to try this right here. So go ahead, sir. I just want to put that out there. It can be confusing with this data lake stuff and XDR and then Sentinel and all this other stuff.
Yeah, Frank's definitely right. I remember now that I do have a lot of the XDR data going into my Sentinel, so I could keep retention past the 30 days that Defender does by default. And then, like we saw, or we'll explain, after the 90 days, it'll do the 180 days, or I'm sorry, the extra 90 to make 180 days in the data lake. So it's a 2 or 3 step process to keep your XDR data even longer. All right, now that we thoroughly confused everybody about data lakes, let's thoroughly confuse everybody about graphs. Now, one of the great quotes out there is defenders think in lists, attackers think in graphs. That was John Lambert from Microsoft. And that's a great way of thinking about it. Previously, before graphs, you look at your tables, you do your KQL queries, you write it all out. Now with graphs, let me make sure I bring up the right one. There's a new way of looking at everything. So you go under your advanced hunting, like you would for your KQL, and then you have your queries. Now there's a new type of query called hunting graph, and that's what I've done here. And you can see hunt for threats using graphs, and you have all of these predefined scenarios. So you can select a scenario, and what I've done is the entity relationship map, and you put in your start entity, and you can figure out or filter out what kind of edges you want. Now, graphs are very useful. You've seen it before with the Sentinel incidents. You'd be able to do a graph and see all the data coming from there. Now these graphs are expanded a lot more. So I've already run the graph for myself, and of course it timed out. Right. One thing is graphs do take a little bit longer than a regular KQL query. And then here is the graph. Now what I did is, when I did this new graph over here, bummer. Yeah, remind me not to switch tabs anymore. When I went to the hunting query or graphs, I selected the entity one. I put in my own name. So this is why I am the center of the universe here. You see, you get information. Again, you zoom in, zoom out. You can move these around just to make it easier to look at. And I'm a king. You do get information from Defender for Cloud if you have it set up. So I would be able to click on Defender for Cloud for one of these and get some information. And it also tells you what you can do. So I can impersonate as an AAD service principal. I have permissions to and have a role on a log analytics workspace. I have permissions to the Azure Function app. Let me go back to my other tenant here. Oh, shoot, come on. What am I doing? I did this here too to see if this will show up, and it didn't. All right, so I was in the wrong place. So let me get this set up here, show you end-to-end what's happening. Oh, good, it saved it. So what I've done here is run the same graph query that I just showed you, but I did it for a user called Archie Dog. Used to be my dog. And it says it has permission to this one, Gary Beach, which if I click on it, says it's a web app. And then it contains a beach, which is the resource group. And then that goes to a SQL server and a SQL database. So you can see that it gives you the basic information, and then you can click the plus signs to go into more and more details. Let's see if I can rerun that. Okay, so we're going to go through that same process again. So here's Archie Dog, has permissions to Gab Beach. Again, I could do my Defender for Cloud to see if it shows anything. Opens up over here, all data. And this is what's really useful, is it will show the attack paths. I don't have anything set up in this one, unfortunately, but it will give you a very good idea of what's coming in. So now I can click my plus, and you can see it loading more information. So it's going out and checking. Again, here is the resource group. So I can expand that. And what is inside the resource group, other than this web app, is the SQL Server, and that contains the SQL database. Now, this is incredibly useful, as you may have seen. Just by starting with the name, I get the first level of what I can access. But then I can go further and further down. So I can see who has access to this system. Now, fortunately, it's nobody in this environment. But it'll give me a much better overview of my environment and the attack paths that the bad actors may or may not use, hopefully may not, to try to access your system. So if for some reason this account got hacked, you can see everything directly and indirectly that person has access to, and see if you need to look at those environments or those entities to see if there's any indication of hacking there. Now, again, this was a very simple example. If I go back to my other one, you can see, again, that I'm the center and there's all these entities around. And if I expand some of these, because there's 5 storage accounts, I can expand it to see all the different storage accounts. And I can right-click and extract all. And it's taking the grouping of 5 and it spread them all out. So now I can go and look to see where all these other ones are. And again, if I click the plus sign, it's going to expand it to see what else is there. Again, it's loading. And that expanded Gab website. So all the different parts and pieces that make up that resource group. Let's see, this show me an attack path. No, nothing yet. Now you may be thinking, okay, this is great, but what if there isn't a hunting graph? Let me go back here and select with predefined scenarios. What if there's a scenario that I have in mind that is not part of these predefined scenarios? That is where we have a new feature under Microsoft Sentinel. There's an entry called Graphs. And if we click that, see it's still in preview. In this case, there's 2 different graphs that show up. We have Graph Sample. Now, this is a notebook that I've created that will go out, gather information, and then present it in a graph. And I will tell you right now, it's very basic. It doesn't show a lot. You have the department, users, and applications. It's more of an example on how to write these notebooks. But you also have the identity attack graph. So I'm going to click Query Graph on that. And you see by default, there is no query. Now, it does not use KQL. It uses GQL for graph query language. And down below, there's a lot of these suggested queries. So I'm just going to click the Visualize Any Graph. And this gives you an idea what it looks like. Match X to Y to Z and return all the information. But I only want to turn 100 of them. So let me run this. And you see this presents another graph. Doesn't look quite as sharp as the predefined graphs look. but still it gives you the information that you need. And again, when you write your own notebooks, you can define the information that gets presented and what happens when you click on it.
So it sounds as though you, you had the identity graph that was already in there, because I'm looking at my tenant at the same time I'm watching yours.
Yeah.
But how do you go about? You see where you see attack graph right there. You see the plus sign next to the chevron to drop down.
Yeah.
How do you add a graph? Can you? It's as simple as going to the down click arrow next to the identity graph at the top.
Down click arrow.
No, to the to right to the right of that. You see that plus arrow?
All right.
Okay, that's okay. That's what I was asking, because in some environments you don't see that. Like, it's either it gives you the impression that you have to use predefined graphs that are already made, or you can't use them at all. Okay.
But you do see I have my custom graph available as well, so I could see both of them. But the custom graph again doesn't have a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing I did want to bring up, and you were actually leading me there, is if I go into my own environment and look at graphs, I don't have anything. I don't even have the identity graph because it's not configured. So that's something you have to go in and configure before you can use it.
Yes.
You have to set up graph, and it'll tell you what parts you have set up. There's 2 different connectors you need to have enabled. Come on. There will be the attack graph connector and the Entra ID connector. And this worked so well when I looked at it just a little while ago.
It's finicky, I'll give you that.
All right. Well, if I go to my content hub, and do a search for graph, okay, Sentinel hates me because I'm doing a demonstration.
I can almost tell you from experience, when you turn on the identity attack graph the very first time, it could take anywhere between 5 minutes and 35 to 40 minutes, because there are 2 different things you have to do, and then there's no way to speed it up. You just got to sort of wait.
Yeah, so you have the Azure resource graph you have to install.
Oh, yours already there then, yeah.
And actually, the installation doesn't take that long, and Sentinel's going to prove me wrong about that. And then once you have that installed, of course, you have to do your connector. So you enable the connector, and like Edward says, it may take a while for it to gather the information that you need. So you don't expect to enable it and see the graphs immediately.
Yeah. It varies. I've done this in a couple of demos, and 5 minutes in some demos, 45 minutes, and you probably want to have this set up in advance. If you want to.
Definitely. That's why I was lucky enough to have an environment where it was already set up, plus this one, which I can show you the steps that it takes to set it up. Mm-hmm. Again, it's just clicking the button, and it'll do the configuration, and you can go from there. And you noticed I had it on graph, but I can also look at a schema view, which is a little bit different, but still gives you the information you need. And there's also the table view, which shows you the different variables, the X, Y, and Z that are part of the query. And you can see X owns Y or Z. So you can figure out how it's going to look. If for some reason you want this information somewhere else, or to put it into a different environment, maybe you have a different way of graphing, you can always export it and then visualize it somewhere else.
Yep.
But the nice thing is there's a lot of pre-built templates that you can use out of the box, as well as being able to create your own. And I just made the mistake of adding additional attack paths to this graph As you can see, well, it's probably because I'm global admin here that I have access to everything. Sure is pretty, though.
That's the thing.
And that is everything I wanted to cover.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Gary. There's so much going on right now. I think the combination of what you showed today and what Chris Switzer showed us a few weeks ago shows how Sentinel and the way you go about using it is thoroughly changed. Most SIMs were just being, log repositories with some intelligence sitting on top of it, and you say you had a SIM, but that's not good anymore. And I think what Graphs, and I'm very much Microsoft and Centric specific in this comment, is that combining this with Graphs, you're going to have more than one perspective to be able to get a complete picture. But let's go back to the most very, very, very basic. And I learned this by doing this podcast and being known Franklin for 7+ years. Well, 6+ years, actually 7+ years. Whatever you put in your SIM, 99% of the time has already happened. So you have to make sure that you don't lose that perspective. I think when people start looking into what is being exposed in their SIM of choice as to truth in the moment, that is not. It is nothing more than an investigative chain for you to be able to go back and start tying stuff together with your disparate log sources. I did not realize that until a few years ago. I took the SANS GAC Forensics 508, and then my eyes lit up. Like, SIMs are just a method of gathering evidence for something that has already occurred, and what you're trying to use it for is in your ability to prove or disprove certain actions that have occurred in your environment, which is why XDR got really popular for a number of years. Remember, there were more XDR partners that you could shake a stick at because they were promising you this, we hunting real. Remember, hunting was the thing. We hunt in real time. What is real time, right? And so now with AI, I think you're probably closer to being able to say you can hunt in real time, because one of the liabilities of running a biological SOC operation was 24-hour coverage, diligence, chase the sun. This is good. Now the graph thing, I would wonder if the graph is probably the thing that you expose much to your security partner. So instead of calling them MSSPs, with the P standing for provider, I think that P, and I said this years ago, should be your partner when they're looking at this type of stuff. Now, how these so-called partners utilize this technology that's inherent inside of Sentinel, who knows? I've yet to see anybody that manages Sentinel as a service come in and say that we look at your graphs, right? So we'll see. Now I'm getting my feet a little bit more wet into it, and I think I got some ideas around it. But as with anything, you're going to have to sort to see. Okay, I have the graph, but your graph is overwhelming to a human. I'm looking at that graph sample you have there. Like, is that a black hole, and the rest of the universe is collapsing into it? So you're going to have to use artificial intelligence to say, what does this mean? This could easily be a COVID exposure matrix or whatever else is out there, right? Deer hunting, or fishing, whatever. So we'll see. But now this is really good stuff, Gary. I really, really appreciate you coming on, man. Is there any closing remarks before we close the show out? I think we end up getting about close to 50 live guests on this particular episode, which is not bad.
I'd like to come back on sometime later and talk more about the GraphQL.
You know what? I sort of knew the name of it, but we talking acronyms. Not actually, we talking letters so much. So it sort of glossed over me when you were saying GPL. Like, oh, I know what he's talking about. Most folks don't realize that you're not using KQL in this. You're using graph query language.
Yeah.
And maybe I tell you what, we'll have you back on the show, and the whole thing would be, let's get into the graph and show the power of GPL.
Sounds great.
But isn't GPL a native language for something else? Franklin, you would know this. Wasn't GPL something else?
GQL. GQL.
What did I say, Jay?
GPL, I think you were saying.
Okay. Golf, Quebec, Lima. There we go. Get it right. There you go. Yeah, so we go there right. See, I'm getting all the stuff done. But no, we need to get them back on. Man, well, thanks everybody for the show. This has been super informative. I know that you get into all these things, you start seeing these presentations and PowerPoint slides, and everybody tries to slam, 300, 400, 500 level system, subject matter expert stuff into your brain in short notice. But, you can't go. When I hear people say we're going to deep dive to this topic in 60 minutes, you can't deep dive in 60 minutes, right? Then of course, in Excel, when you pay for it, it's 4 or 5 days. But we need to have a series where we come in and we start talking about these things. I thought about putting a show on where we just go down the entire left side of the Sentinel and talk about every piece of aspect. What is a workbook, a notebook? Most people don't even use the hunting part of Sentinel like they used to. And that was one of my favorite things, being able to set those predefined hunting queries. They're already predetermined on CVEs and IOCs. People take for granted. So I'm going to
know a good resource for workbooks if you want to learn about it.
Oh yeah, my favorite feature inside of Sentinel workbooks.
I wrote a book on it, right?
I do know you wrote a book on it, Gary.
I get a plug in here sooner.
Yeah, I get a plug in. I know I didn't get a signed copy. Didn't I buy your book?
I don't know. I don't know if anybody bought my book. I get like 28 cents a month royalties.
I think I wanted a physical copy or something. And because I tell Rod when he's writing books, I want a signed copy. I will buy the book. I always support. I got some old Rod books over there for SMS.
Oh wow!
On my shelf from years ago, 2000s, right? So we're still in the 2000s, but you know what I'm talking about. So everyone, somebody said, "How do I learn KQL?" Edward, this is how you learn KQL. You must go to must learn KQL. That is the answer. So to add me at 5570, Rod Trent wrote an outstanding series of learnings around, and it had books, mugs, all the stuff. Must learn KQL is your go-to. Buy the book. Actually go and pull down the Git. It is the best foundational KQL learning source out there. Period.
I do have that book somewhere.
I have the signed copy over here sometimes too. It's good. They said, does it come with bitter? Now I know who this 5570 is right now. Does it come with bitter milk? It comes with bitter herbs and content. And that's what it comes with, and everything. So thanks everyone. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about certifications, in particular Microsoft security certifications and what that evolution looks like. In addition, stay tuned, and Microsoft Build is next week. I know Build is being built and billed as a developer conference. If you are working in technology, you need to be there, security otherwise. This is going to be one of the most impactful Microsoft Build sessions in Microsoft's history. You probably want to be there. This is sort of like the announcement of 95, 98, Vista, NT, XP, 7, 7.1, 8.0, 10, 11. You need to be a Bill. So everyone, have a good one.